Alrighty, so we are in week 13, and in week 13, the only thing new is the final project. And the final project is you're supposed to write a program to play the game of tic-tac-toe. Again, if you want to do something else, that's fine with me. Just run it by me first before you start doing it. At the very least, the program should have it's going to be a graphical user interface program. So if you're not doing a GUI program, you're not going to get credit. It has to be a GUI program, which means you have to use what you learn in chapters 9 and 10. The program has to have 9 buttons placed inside of a window. The buttons should be contained inside of a two-dimensional array. I ask you to use nested loops to add action listeners to the buttons, because you should know how to use nested loops for 2D arrays. And upon clicking the buttons, they have to change. So they're either going to change to X or an O, depending on whichever player's turn it is. And you're not supposed to change a button more than once. Okay, in other words, in here I have, I guess you can see it. So let's say you have a player X has already clicked the button. If a player O tries to click that same button, then it cannot be changed. Okay, so basically you cannot, just like a regular tic-tac-toe game. What else? Then, and then the winner is determined if you have 3 of the same kind diagonally or in a row or in a column. Then that particular player wins, and the game ends. You can disable the game, you can turn off, you can exit the program, whatever you want. It's pretty much up to you. Okay? Any questions on this stuff? Mm-hmm. Nested loops?
Nested loops?
Yeah.
What do you mean for that, for number 2?
Well, you remember how this is going to be a two-dimensional array with the buttons, right? So one loop is going to change this index, and then another loop is going to change this index. That way you don't have to go and manually add the action listeners for every specific thing. Okay? And then actually what I'm going to do today, my plan for today is to show you how I did it. And I'm not going to post the code though. So if anyone wants to use my solution, you got to watch the video and type it up at least. Okay, but then don't do that unless you absolutely get stuck. Okay, and then of course, extra credit or optional is if you want to make it a little bit more complicated, make it so that it tries to block you. So it defends, and then for a little extra complication is make it so that it tries to beat you. So a fully functional tic-tac-toe game with all the extra credits should be basically you're playing against the computer, and the computer always ties with you. You never can beat it, right? And one person already did it that way. So awesome job. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you the basic version of this without defending and all that good stuff. And I have it here. So first of all, let's run it, just make sure it works. All right, so here's the tic-tac-toe. All right, I have created, a two-dimensional array of buttons. You can see them in there. I have given a label to each of these buttons initially to this, just so that I can identify them. And then, so if I click a button, and then by the way, the player's turn is, you can make it random. I don't think I did it. I made it as a random. No, it is a random. Okay, so I don't know who goes first, but you click it, and now this is the X's turn, right? It was the X's turn. If I click it again, you can see it does not get changed. Now it's O's turn, right? So if I click somewhere else, now it's O, right? If I keep clicking this thing, nothing changes, right? I go X again. Oops. I guess I broke it. My own game doesn't work, damn it. All right, one more time. I swear I tested a bunch of times and it worked. Click, 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 click. Damn it. Yeah, I gotta play around with it some more. But whatever. You can fix my bug. So it's click, 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 and then there's the winner, right? And it gives you like a little thing, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, it closes the command window and it shows you, oh, there you go, all wins. Okay. So, damn it, I can't believe I.
To have it play against yourself, you just have to write it before loop, right? So like if else, right?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay.
Okay, so what did I do? And of course, the one what I just showed you, that's one thing that should not happen, right? So make sure you fix my bug if you're going to be turning in my code. All right, so if I click this, and then I click it again and again, and I click again, yeah. So what happens is, it thinks that when I click here, so let me do it again so I can show you what the bug is. I run it, right? So I click this, so now it's player X's turn, right? I click this, now it's player O's turn, right? But when I click this button, it thinks that now it changes the turn to the X's again, and then when I click this, then the game stops working the right way. I don't know why. Honestly, I tested this a bunch of times and I didn't notice it. But I'll fix it maybe next time. But you're not going to see that in the video anyway. So anyway, what did I do? So I make my window. I make a 2D array of buttons, right? And I have a boolean that keeps track of what is the player's turn. Okay? I make my window. I give a label to the window. I give a size to the window. And I do the window closing event, which keeps track of if the window gets closed. I don't know, where is that thing? Window closing. Window closing is this, right? So if we close the window, program exits. Okay, just like we've done in chapters 9 and 10. Okay, I set the layout. My layout is set using a grid layout. Okay, and this is the 2D, the nested loop that adds the events. Okay, so what I do is I create a new button, right, giving it a label of the value for the row and the column, right, and I make it equal to, or I make my array of buttons equal to that new button every time. Okay, so I have to do this one time here. I have to do the new operator one time when I create an array of 2D array. And then I have to do another new in here when I'm creating the new buttons that I'm placing inside of the array every time. Okay? And I take advantage of the same loop to do the action listener, right? And to place my buttons to the window itself. Okay? And I have already set the layout so it knows how to organize them, right? It will fill them up line by line, three by three. Okay? That's the grid layout. Any questions about this stuff so far?
The first part of the code is you're making the box and the buttons in the box where the for loop is, right? Before amp row, that's pretty much what you're doing. Putting the
So this here is just makes the buttons. This here adds the action listener for each of the buttons, and this is the one that actually places the buttons on the window.
okay.
Okay. I make the window visible, and I choose the player's turn. And what I'm doing here is I'm using something called a ternary operator, right? What is the ternary operator? It's this funny looking thing here with the question mark, right? It basically translates to an if, and if this random number is equal to 0, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the player's turn equal to true, and otherwise I'm going to set the player's turn equal to false. So whether I write it with this if that I have in here, right, or I do it using this ternary operator on the top, it basically does the same thing. So it's like we're checking to see if this condition here is true, right? That's with the question mark. And if this here is true, then this variable is equal to true, and otherwise this variable is equal to false, right? So that's a ternary operator. It's like an inline shortcut for an if. Okay. Then in my main, I just have a new tic-tac-toe, which starts the makes a new window, basically a new starts with a new constructor, which makes all this good stuff here. Okay. Now, the next thing is to examine the event listener or the action listener. So remember, every button has its own event listener or action listener, which is this button events class. Okay, what is the button events class? Well, it's this right here, right? The button events class implements action listener, and I do tell you in the hints to implement action listener, right? And then I say here, use action performed action event E, and that is exactly what I'm going to do in here. Action performed action event E, okay, is part of the action listener interface. And what we're going to do in here is I basically look for which button was clicked. How do I identify which button was clicked? And again, I'm just going to use the same kind of a nested loop scheme that I have on top, right? Same thing to find my button that was clicked. How do I know which button was clicked? Well, if any one of these array of buttons is equal to my E get source, then that button was clicked. And at that point, I just say found is equal to true, and that is, I'm pretty sure that is where it messes up the player turn. So this is where it's going. This is where it goes wrong. I'm pretty sure, but I gotta look at it some more. Yeah. I thought this other if's in there on the bottom changes it, but whatever. No, that's the piece that goes wrong. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the line of code that makes it. Okay. So anyway, all that this loop is doing is it finds which button was clicked. Okay, and depending on which player's turn it is, right? If it is a specific player's turn, and the button does not equal to 0 or O, and the button does not equal to X, we haven't set the text to one or the other, then I'm going to set it to X if it is player X's turn. Does that make sense? So in other words, if the button hasn't been set to either X or O already, then and it is player's turn, I'm going to make that button equal to X, which is why you can't really change button once it's been changed. So that part works, but the part that messes up is the player turn itself gets changed. Okay, so the fix with this most likely would be to just grab this piece of code here and throw it right in there on the bottom, right? Throw in the curly bracket, right? And then put this piece of code in there, all right? And then get rid of it here, and then do the same thing for the other else, right?
Is that switching its turn every time? Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, that's what's happening. That's why I kind of got lazy. I was trying to make it really short and sweet, and it didn't turn out that well. Maybe I was messing with it at the end. Anyway, does this part make sense? Any questions on this?
So you just add player X turn on the bottom of the if and else.
Yeah. All right. So the if starts here and ends there, and then I have a couple of things in there. I have this condition, and another condition and another condition. So if it is player X's turn and the button hasn't been set already to either X or O, make it equal to X. And if it is not player X's turn and it's not been set to either X or O, then make the text equal to O. Okay? And then that's it. And I have this found business so that I can just stop the loops at some point. Okay? That makes sense?
Do you have to add the change the player turn into both?
Yeah.
In both ifs, right?
Yes, both. So you would have to move this code to be part of this if. I mean, not part of the if, but part of the what happens in the if, right? And then I'll do the same thing for the other one. Yeah, so I'll move this here, and I'll do the same thing for the else as well.
Yeah.
And then I'll get rid of it from here. Okay? Okay, so I guess it gives you a little extra to do because you can't just turn in my code. That's actually even better. I'd say I did that on purpose. So then the next thing that I do is just not to clutter my code too much was basically, so this is just to find what button was clicked, okay? So, or not even to find which button was clicked, but to change the text of a button that you're trying to click, if possible. Okay, and then the next step, the next logical step is to try to find a winner. So after we have clicked the button, it's a good time to check to see if there is a winner, and it makes sense to put that in its own separate method. So and just to visualize, you know, these are the buttons, right? This is how I label them: 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, right? So we can either have a winner horizontally, right? Or we can have it vertically, or we can have it diagonally. So the first thing I do is I check it by rows, right? So the first one will be if 0, 0 is equal to 0, 1, and 0, 1 is equal to 0, 2. Basically, all these three are equal. The second will be if, you know, the second row buttons, the buttons in the second row are equal. The third one is if the buttons in the third row are equal. Okay? And what I do in here is I just have a loop that goes and looks through all these different buttons, right? Notice how this piece here is always 0, 1, 2, right? Well, actually, this piece here is always 0. This piece here is always 1. What I mean is this is a 0, this is a 0, and this is a 0. That's why this piece here is a 0, right? And the actual value in here, 0, 1, 2, is what's being changed by the loop itself. Okay? Then the next button here is a 1, right? And again, this is the 1 in here, and then this value here, 0, 1, 2, is what is being changed by the variable I in here, right? So this first piece, right, tells it to look at these two buttons, okay? And then the next piece here, this piece, makes it look at the next two buttons. Same kind of business, okay? And if any of these are equal, if any of these happen to be equal, if all these three are equal, then I'm going to display the winner, and the display the winner is basically just system on print line with a little something in there. Okay, and then just again, the rule is if you're gonna have maybe like 3, 4 or more lines of code, put it in a separate method just to clean up your code. Otherwise, I would have had to put this every time this is true, and it will just clutter up my code more. Okay. Any questions? Make sense? Okay.
Are you going to show us a way where, well, I mean, if it plays against you, wouldn't it just be, maybe we did something in 45 where like something played against us, clicked it, and it would do the opposite of what we ever clicked. I don't know what game it was.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
No, I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, you have to figure out how to have it play against you on your own. But we do have a very good solution. She has it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you wrote yours to play against it?
Mm-hmm.
Mine does that, we have to kind of look at the text and compare it.
Okay, so well, I mean, finding the winner is not going to be different, right? It's pretty much the same kind of thing. Maybe
It's identical.
yeah, but the actual part where it tries to block you and tries to make its own move, that's a different story. Yeah. Okay, so this was just finding the winner by rows, and then the next one is check the winner by columns, right? So we're checking to see if this is equal to this, and that is equal to this, or this is equal to this, which is equal to that, right? And again, it really helps out if you write it out just like this for your own sake, so that you can see which numbers are changing. You can see that we're trying to do this is equal to this, and in here, this number doesn't change, right? So that's why I have this as a 0. The second number, the second index goes from 0, 1, 2, and that is the value that's being changed for I in here, right, based on the loop. And what it's doing is I'm getting the text of the button, right? And I'm checking to see if that text of this particular button is equal to the text of the next button next to it. Okay? You can't do the equal sign because then strings don't work that way in Java, or they work sometimes, most of the times not really. Okay? So that's the reason I have to do equals. If I could do the equal sign, then I would just do something like this, right? If the text of this button is equal to the text of the other button. Okay? So I do the same kind of thing for my rows and my columns, and the diagonal only has to be checked one time, so I don't really need to do a loop. I only need to check if these three are equal. I do that in here, right? And then I also need to check if the other diagonal is equal. The other diagonal is this, is equal to this, and that is equal to this, and that is this particular case, and I just write it out manually, and I show you the winner for every time, right? So depending on which player, depending on what button was clicked, right? If the button that was the button where this win was triggered would be the one that wins, basically, right? So if the last one that clicked was an X, and that's when the winner happens, then the X wins. Otherwise, the O wins, and then the whole program exits. Okay? Make sense? Any questions? It's not very long, as you can see. It's not even very complicated. All right, the more complicated part is trying to come up with a algorithm to have play against yourself. And if you see someone else's, you're gonna be like, wow, this is not so hard. But then try to come up with it yourself. Okay, that will be the real challenge. Okay, any questions? All right, so yeah, you can see that if I get rid of a lot of these comments, this thing is probably going to be like less than 100 lines long. It's not a very long project, so it's up to you on how much you want to overcomplicate it or how efficient you are with your own code, but that's all that needs to be done. And yeah, so again, the program from the beginning to the end is I think I already showed you all of it. And yeah, that's the tic-tac-toe project. 15% of your grade.
That part where you check the winner.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to come up with like a clever way to just check it much more easily, but it's the same code as what you have.
Yeah.
Figure out a clever way to have to check each square against each other. Like this.
Yeah.
Basically exactly like
Yeah,
where
that's.
you check the winner.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else either. Yeah, okay, so I'll post this video for you. You let me know if you have any questions.